Everybody, I'm with my friend Doug here, and we're going to do a little talking about. We were covered on this a little bit yesterday, talking about overcoming obstacles, keeping a positive attitude, navigating through life that way instead of falling behind in the shame and the despair of everything. You just pick up where you are. And take the cards you got dealt and play them the best you can and carry on.
Yeah.
So, let's go with that.
Okay.
So, tell me a little bit about your early childhood as you started to get into blindness and what obstacles first came to you, and how did your parent react? And,
Well, I actually didn't start going blind until I was in my 20s, late 20s, early 30s.
great. Well,
So-
at my age, that's childhood.
So my first exposure wasn't my childhood, though. It was my grandfather.
Right.
So, my first impressions of it was, oh, this is rough. This is, he had some training, but it was, he was almost non-functional in certain aspects without a family member helping him. So that was always my outlook was, this is going to be, once I found out, I didn't find out that I was going to have the same disease as him until after he was gone. But then that was the thing, I was like, am I always going to have to depend on someone else to help me with things? And so, but when I first started facing it, it was a challenge. I first started not being able to drive at night, and so I had to figure out how I do that. I'm a newly single dad. I just had gone through a divorce, and so it was okay. So now I can't drive my children at night. So it's kind of putting systems in place, but also being like, there's nothing I can do about it. I can't drive at night. There's no Uber at the time.
Right.
And so it was just figuring out what I had to do to keep putting one foot in front of the other,
Right.
That's ultimately what it all is about, right?
Was there a time in the beginning where you started to feel a little bit helpless, a little bit hopeless, have the mindset of, man, my life is always going to be bad, or I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to that, before you developed a more a winning attitude of thinking, I can do these things, I just do them a different way.
Absolutely. And it's still, it's a process every day, right?
Right.
But it's about doing course corrections and realizing, hey, nobody wants to come to your pity party.
Right.
Nobody's going to be able to do anything for you but you, right? So,
Right.
But yeah, at first, and for a long time, even I got depressed. It's kind of that same, I think it goes for anybody that, especially when it comes to losing something that you had. I think being born with a disability is different, but there's a lot more of a grieving process when you lose something later on, right?
Yeah,
So,
you miss something if you've had it before, but if you've never had it, you probably wouldn't miss it because you learn from the beginning how to navigate through life with whatever it is that you have as an obstacle. Yeah.
So I went through all the stages of grief, denial, and finally, eventually, got around to acceptance.
Right.
But all of those things, and that's when I gained a big portion of my weight. Was during that time when I was trying to work still, trying to be a dad, and my kids 50% of the time, and so I'm trying to deal with that, but then also I'm dealing with my vision constantly changing because it is a progressive disease.
Right.
So as soon as I feel like I've tackled how do I solve X, Y, and Z, And I guess this kind of goes to our topic, right?
Right.
As soon as I figured out, and I thought I had a plan, right? What do they say is, if you want to hear God laugh, tell him what your plan is.
Tell them what your plan is. Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's the same kind of thing, right? And
Right.
it's if you want to hear the universe laugh, whatever, however you want to put it. But
Right.
if you are not willing to adapt and change, then you get stuck. So, you know, I had to deal with that a lot. I had to deal with it, you know, at first it was not being able to drive at night. Eventually it was not being able to drive at all. So
Right.
my kids were all still, I think my son was about to get his permit when I stopped driving in 2015.
Wow. Okay.
My oldest son. So, and I had driven for a couple of years when I shouldn't have driven, thinking that was the only way to solve my problem. But there were other ways, and I eventually figured those out. I got past that stage of, and I still was good about having a positive mindset for moments during the day,
Yeah.
but then I was still sad, you know? I
Right.
was still depressed.
So eventually, I mean, this new kind of attitude that you've more stronger developed now of being able to say, okay, this is the challenge we have today, and even though it wasn't exactly the challenge I had yesterday, I know that I overcame before. I can overcome this. I just have to figure a way of doing it. So it seems to me like as your life has been progressing and as you're walking through this world, you're starting to become a more flexible mind. They say things must not be this way, or they must be this way, they must not be that way, and be able to say, okay, this is the reality I find myself in, so I have to act accordingly, even if it wasn't the reality that you had yesterday or last year.
Right.
So, I see that in you as having more and more of a flexible brain.
Try to.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, you often, from talking with you, I mean, a lot of times, you often don't think of yourself as a blind guy. You think of yourself as a guy.
Yeah. What happens to be blind?
Right. It happens to be blind. It's just an aspect of who you are.
Right.
But you're a guy. You like to do guy things, and you think guy things, and you know, you go at challenges like, okay, I need to overcome this, rather than just fold and saying, you know, laying on the floor in fetal position, letting the world take over.
Yeah.
It seems to me like your mind has gotten to the point where it's more flexible, saying, okay, this is different than yesterday, so I'm going to do something different than yesterday.
Right.
And I will overcome.
I think it's getting to that point to where it goes back to that plan thing, but I think that some of us, some men especially, have gotten into their mind that it's formulaic. You know, if I do this, and this, she'll love me. Or if I
It
do
must be this way.
and
Yes.
then, you know, and that's our way of trying to control things. And, you know, we touched on this basically. The only thing I can control is myself and my reaction to things. And kind of letting go of trying to control everything is what I've been working on for years.
Yeah.
And it is a process, but the more that I'm able to let go of those things and kind of, for lack of a better word, just get zen with the fact that shit is the way it is, you know?
Yeah, it is the way it is.
And there's nothing I can do about what has happened, and you know, I cannot waste energy on what's already transpired. If I do, it's going to take me longer to solve the problem that's sitting right in front of me.
Because you're not solving the problem, you're hashing over things that can't change. You know, I lost a son to drug abuse, and it was something that it was hard part for me to go through. It's like, I didn't raise my son this way.
Yeah.
This wasn't the dream I had for him as I held him as a baby in my hands. But I had to come to the realization, some other people helped me with that, is that he's going to make his own decisions, he's going to do his own things. What happens outside of you you have no control over. And it's a matter of realizing what is me and what is not me. Because if it's me, there's something I can do. But if it's not me, there's not something I can do.
Absolutely.
Maybe I can have a small amount of influence on what happens outside of my skin. But where I have the biggest power and the most influence is what happens inside. Inside the skull, yeah.
I think we're kind of programmed that way as men, though, that we want, you're supposed to be a problem solver, a protector, and everything else. But I think that's where, relationship-wise, sometimes we get in trouble, right?
Right.
How many times has a woman tried to vent to you or to me, and our first thing is, well, maybe you should do this, 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 and this.
Right.
They don't want that.
Right.
They're not looking for us to solve the problem. They're just looking for us to listen for a minute.
To feel it, yeah.
Right, to just empathize and listen. But our first response is, well, have you tried this? Have you tried what? And they're like, of course I've tried that. Like, I'm not stupid. But that's kind of the way that we're programmed. I know a lot of guys that are like that.
We seem to be very much pattern seekers.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if A falls down, then you do this with B
Exactly.
to pick A up, and it's a pattern that we've used before. And then in another situation, A falls down and go, B doesn't work for that.
Right.
It's entirely different.
We're very logical,
Right.
mechanical thinkers, whereas women are, not all women, of course, that's a generalization, but
Right.
women tend to be more emotional and they tend to feel things, and they feel things a little bit more deeply. Not that guys don't have feelings, but we tend to go, well, how does this work compared to how that situation was before? And that goes back to that control thing, is we're trying to control every situation.
Because we were always able to fix things in the past.
Yeah.
And it's hard to give up the fact that, you can't fix this.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's sometimes easier to catch something if you give a little bit when you're
Yes.
catching it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You give a little bit and you give it a softer landing, but if you're always trying to reach out and grab it before it falls, you might
Right.
break a finger or something.
Right.
So
I've heard it said, some of the things I like to listen to and follow, but there's a saying, like, try to grasp water. Just take your fist and grab water and squeeze it tight. How much water are you going to have in your hand?
right.
Yet, for instance, like in the case of a river or a stream, if the water's flowing by and you stick your hand in the water and it's open, you can guide the water and help the water to do different things. But if you try to grasp a hold of it and grab total control, you find that you're without water.
Or if you cup your hands, which is more of a gentle than a grasp, yeah.
Right, right. But you can guide and you can ease things. And I try to use that example in my life when I can remember it, to not be quite so rigid, have a more flexible brain, find a way to guide things. Because you have a small amount of influence, but you don't have control. And what you do with whatever the result is the big thing. That's the thing we can control.
It's kind of like water. I mean, it's
Yeah.
on the other end. It's being the water, right?
Being the water.
It's finding that path. I mean, the water made the Grand Canyon, but it did it very, very, very slowly. That small amount of influence, like you said, right?
Yeah, I've often described it as, water doesn't contend with the rock that's in the stream. It just encounters it and then it says, okay, I'll go a different way.
Yeah.
And it flows to an easier path. But somehow that water makes a change to that rock. Eventually that rock becomes smooth. But the rock doesn't sit there and it gets stuck. It doesn't contend, doesn't fight with the rock. It just simply goes, okay, you're not moving, I'm going somewhere else, I'm doing something else. And we can learn so many things from nature by observing the principles in nature.
Absolutely. Animals problem solve all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, if a squirrel can't get a certain nut somewhere, then he's going to go somewhere else and try to get it. Like, he's not just going to starve. He's not just going to.
Yeah, he won't stay on the one nut. Yeah.
He's not gonna, he's not gonna sit there and feel sorry for himself. He's gonna try to get more food.
There's so much that we can learn from nature that way.
Yeah.
I got thinking about it before. Was probably, or most likely, a lot of the things that we eat, we learned that they were edible by watching animals eat them. It's like, well, the animal ate that, and the deer ate that, didn't kill the deer, so maybe I can eat it. Just by observing nature, we learn. There's an old saying that when a student is ready, the teacher will appear. And at one point when I first heard that, I always thought the teacher was a person. But the teacher's not always the person. The teacher could be an animal, could be a stream, could be the tree. If you have a mind to learn, to be a student, there's something that can teach you something.
I agree with that. That's something that I've always told my children, and anybody that would listen to me, but really my children, is I try to learn something every day, and I try to learn something from every person, right? I ask a lot of questions and drive some people in my life nuts, but I ask a lot of questions, and it's so that I can learn, and it's because I'm open to. I may not even agree with what they say, but if I can see into their mind a little bit and understand why they thought that way or why they approach that problem in a different way, it helps me to understand either why my logic is sound, at least, or it might help me expand on different ways I can do things.
Right.
Different options, putting different things in my toolkit.
Right. I thought it's one of the reasons why I like talk with you, because we share a lot of the same in ideas, but you'll come up with something a little different the way that I would have thought of it, and I may come up with something different, but somehow that tempers what we know.
Exactly. Yep.
And it doesn't always change our mind, but it tempers it so that this can be another acceptable way,
right.
Another acceptable way of looking at it, or way of doing it. Like the old saying says, there's many paths to the top of the mountain.
If you don't mind, I would like to key off of that just a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason that I moved to the Philippines, was because I felt like the way things were back at home were not. I had tried that for 47 years.
Right.
And I'm like, let's try something else, Is Western medicine always the best way to go? Is Western thinking, is capitalism the way to go? I don't think it is. I think there's a lot, is the way that our government is in its current state, maybe not the original intent of the government, but is that thinking, and so part of me coming to the Philippines was an extension of my journey is to looking at different ways of
Exploring things.
exploring different ways of thinking and different ways of living life.
Right.
Do I have to be involved in this rat race? Do I have to keep up with the Joneses? Do I need to sell my house every 6 years so I can get more in debt for the next house? Do I need to have, I have a 50-inch TV? Do I really need a 60-inch TV? Or
Right.
do I need, I have a Fire Stick. Do I need the next Fire Stick that just came out because it's Generation 3? And all of that stuff is stuff that I was, don't get me wrong, I'm a tech guy, I was into stuff like that, but it wasn't really at my core values, and I was like, where can I explore? And it didn't have to just be the Philippines, but I kept hearing about people who traveled and how much it broadened their horizons just to see other cultures and be exposed to other things.
Right.
And so I think that's part of it for me. That's part
that
of my
happened,
flexible mindset.
That happened with me, not on purpose, but when I joined the Navy. So we went on a cruise and we went to different places. Philippines was being one of them. But I think, well, except for a couple of military bases, the Philippines was the first place I actually got off the ship and saw a different culture. And it was amazing how the people were. And they don't have all the things that we do in the West. And they don't worry about that. But they still have joy.
Always, yeah.
Yeah, and the things that you would take for granted, like I was at a person's house when I first got there, and it was a house that was split into 4 sections, so it was actually 4 different dwellings in one house, and it was the first time I was able to realize that, hey, some people have houses that don't have windows. They have holes where they could look out of, but it's not a pane of glass there.
Right.
And people have restrooms and showers that aren't indoors. It's done in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, people live differently in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
But you see them always with a smile. You see them happy, and in a way for them, it's a blessing that they don't get caught up in all this silly stuff. And we have a tendency to put a huge importance on it.
Right.
And if you can just get out from underneath it for a short time and see life through somebody else's eyes, it can temper, like I said, it can temper the way we feel about the world, the way we feel about things. I think there's a big lack of that in the world.
There
One of the
is.
reasons why I came,
Yeah, I think that, you said when you came, I think you came to the Philippines in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
And I came to Southeast Asia, I came to Okinawa in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was part of the thing, because always in the back of my mind, I was like, I want to get back to Asia. I want, living for that summer in Okinawa was something that it was just life-changing, right? Just that
because
short
you see,
6 weeks.
You see a world that you really never knew existed.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden your world becomes bigger.
Yeah. I wish more people could experience it, I think that, but I think that part of the way that governments try, I'm not just going to talk about the U.S., but part of the way that governments try to control their people is by saying, oh, it's dangerous everywhere else. I mean, how many times have we heard that it's dangerous in the Philippines, it's dangerous here, it's dangerous there?
Yeah, I heard a lot. Isn't it dangerous there? And it seems like it's like there's a mechanical setting, at least in the U.S., because that's where I'm from, of course, and you. But is that there's a carrot on a stick, and it's just barely out of reach. And don't look anywhere else. Stay on the hamster wheel. Keep chasing the carrot until you get it. And they don't want you to look from one side to the next, like, oh, look at these other hamsters. They're just kicking back and sunning themselves or swimming or having a good time. No, you just focus on staying on the hamster wheel. Keep chasing that carrot.
The only path to happiness that you can have is the one that we've already laid in front of you.
Right.
And that was
And all you gotta do is work hard enough, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But it's also, that is how the rich get richer, is that they keep us, we're the fuel, right? We're the fuel. In a corporation, the corporate drones are what makes, these rich, media moguls or whatever richer, right? That's what makes the people who own these big online companies, it's what makes them own the world.
So guys like you and me are a big disappointment, right, to those guys. Because they're going, wait a minute, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. And we're going, no, I don't think so. Okay, we're off doing something else.
I got a waterfall to see, man.
I gotta go plunge in the water over here. I'm gonna go listen to this river flow.
Right. I gotta feed my fish to my feet to some fish.
Yeah, let the fish nibble on my feet a little bit. And they're going, no, you need to be doing this, you need to be doing that, you need to be turning that hamster wheel. And we're just going, I don't know, I don't see it that way.
Yeah.
So
I
we're a
see
big
a lot of
disappointment.
comments of different YouTube videos too.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, "Oh, you're so lucky you're born in the United States because now you can travel, on your Social Security or on your disability or whatever."
Yeah.
We are fortunate, for sure.
Yeah.
But are you saying that because you're really supportive of the decision you made? Are you saying that because you're scared to get outside of your comfort zone?
Right.
And so you're kind of you're upset with me, and I understand that you're jealous. You know what? I was jealous of a lot of the guys that I watched that were doing it before I got over here.
Right.
But that's where the deviation is. You can be jealous for a moment, right? You can be envious for that moment, but then what do you do with that? Do you sit and become a little jealous schmeagle, right? Do you sit there until you become Gollum, or do you move forward and do you go and chase that dream? And my dream was to live abroad, and I'm living it. You know, I told you yesterday, like I woke up yesterday and I said, wow, I live in the Philippines. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Yeah.
And I made it happen.
And that touches on something I'm going to talk about maybe on another video, but about with the mindset and stuff that that you talked about there. Being able to watch yourself, because we're strolling along, we're doing our life, we're hanging around, being cool, but we need to take some time where you can kind of step back from behind your face and be on the outside looking at yourself. How am I acting? What am I doing? Am I getting upset about this? Is this bringing me joy? How do I react with these people? How do I do this situation? Where you're watching yourself as an outside observer, and then it's easier to judge going, wow, I just started being the guy I didn't want to be right there. But when you recognize that, you can go, oh, okay, so since I don't want to be that way, I'll do something different, I'll be different.
Right.
But when you're inside of yourself and you don't notice the world outside of you so much as a difference, as a barometer, you can get stuck in these ways of thinking, and you can get poor woe is me and get all balled up into something because that seems just like that's the whole world. But if you could step outside that and observe yourself, say, look at that dude, he's not winning right now. So then you step back in and go, okay, I can make a new decision.
Right.
I can become something else.
Why isn't Doug happy right now? What's going on? Is Doug the cause of it?
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, you probably are, because it might be your mindset in that moment. It might be how you're reacting. Are you acting the way that you would advise someone else to act?
Right.
And I think that's important to any sort of anything. It's applicable to a job, but being able to say, am I performing the way that I should be performing? But it's applicable just to your day-to-day life. I totally agree with you.
I went through a lot of mind-body training through the organization I was with, was working for, and they had a program, the way they called it was brain education. Mm-hmm. And through this brain education, I kind of developed some of my own things, as well adopting is what they showed me. And what I started telling people that had like anger issues or sadness issues or whatever, I would say, sit in a quiet place, close your eyes, stop all the outside stimulation. Stop hearing this and hearing that. Focus on, just ask yourself, why am I angry? Why am I angry? Why am I angry? Just over and over again. And I said, about the first 100 answers that come to you, throw them out. Just keep asking, why am I angry? Why am I angry? And then you go, I'm angry because you're pointing your finger because this guy did this, or because that happened, and you're pointing different directions in your mind. But eventually, when you keep asking, why am I angry? Why am I angry? Eventually, your finger starts pointing back at you, and it comes down to, I'm angry because I had an unrealistic expectation, and it didn't work that way. And so did what happened? Did what happened? Is that bad? No. What was bad is I expected something different. So I created, like you said, I created my own, anger, created my own sadness. It was caused by me. Yeah. And that's what I've always taught some people that I've worked with is that just keep asking. And the first several answers, 100 answers or whatever that come to you, just throw it out. Keep asking. So I want a deeper answer. I want a more true answer. And eventually it comes back to, well, it all boils down to me. And that's when you become the outside observer. Oh, you see, I just did that. and you don't beat yourself up over it. You just say, well, I don't like the result of that, so I'll do something different.
Yeah.
You just change it.
There's no reason to wallow. It's just a self-revelation and then move
Absolutely.
forward. You
Yeah,
know?
keep your brain flexible so that it can say, well, if that doesn't work, let me try something new.
I think that goes to the core of I think becoming a better person, even just in friendships. Getting to know yourself.
Right.
Being comfortable with yourself. How long does it take people? Some people don't get comfortable with themselves.
Right.
They don't spend any time alone. You and I talked about, you spend a lot of time alone, I spend a lot of time alone.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get to where I can just kind of sit in the zone with myself and be cool with it.
Yeah.
But I think it makes you stronger in interpersonal relationships, not be that friendships or, family relationships or, a romantic relationship.
Right.
But being able to sit back and go, what's up with me first?
Right.
Before you're looking at externally. What's going on with me?
Right.
It's so true, man. So I think so key to my mindset is
One of
to
the-
look inwardly.
One of the things I learned through this brain education was being able to recognize that very thing. And, well, what if I make a mistake? Well, make the mistake. Make it with all the gusto and all the passion
So
you can. Just go into it,
Yeah.
Make your mistake big. And then step back and say, okay, well, try something else.
Yeah.
But if you go into it too timidly and then you don't even recognize that it was you that made the mistake, go ahead and make the mistake. Do it with all your heart. Do it with all your passion. And then recognize that, there was a saying, I think it's even in the Bible, it says, let a fool persist in his ways, and he'll learn. If you keep saving him, he's never going to learn. But you let him fall down, you let him bump his head a few times, he starts going, hey, wait a minute.
And that's what I learned a lot when I went through blindness training,
Right.
was I could do my lessons and I could 100 lessons in a row perfect. But when I made that mistake, when I got lost on an O&M route, orientation, mobility, cane travel, when I got lost, that's when my true growth was happening.
Absolutely.
Just in those moments. And it's the same with coming over here.
Yeah.
The same with coming over here. I've made mistakes over here. I've made several mistakes. But all my mistakes, I made in paradise. So why not? Why not try it?
Yeah,
you're growing in paradise.
Yeah.
Don't sit at home and make the mistakes.
You can make mistakes in a lousy place. Yeah.
I go, I made mistakes, but the next day it was 75 to 85 degrees.
Hey, I'm in the Philippines. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
It's great to have to learn. As we all live longer and get older and have different experiences, we start learning things like this that we didn't know as kids.
Yeah.
So this is a wonderful thing. Going to the Philippines, I had people ask me, well, "What if you don't like it there?" So what if I don't? I'll just go somewhere else. I mean,
There's Vietnam.
I can go back. I can I can do a flip. I can do whatever. Right? It's just because they go and try something, thinking that this is something I feel it would be good for me. I could be wrong, but what if I am wrong? I'll just do something else.
Yeah, exactly.
And like you do with your moving around course and stuff, you find yourself lost. Okay, so now what?
Right.
And you find ways to get back, right?
And so the next time I get lost, I've got more strength. I've got more.
Because you know that I got lost before and I got
And I
back.
didn't die, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still alive.
Yeah, you grow so much confidence and strength from doing these things and having these mistakes. You just go, what, I failed before, but I pulled out of it. So what if I failed again? I'll pull out of that too. It's kind of like I think maybe I missed it with you yesterday or somebody else I was talking to. Like, a bird flies into a tree or a bush and it can land on the smallest twig. And when it lands on it, the twig just bounces up and down. The bird is going up and down, bouncing on this twig. And the bird doesn't get scared, it's going to fall.
Mhm.
What if the twig breaks? Bird goes, I'll just fly.
Right.
I don't care that it's not a big twig or it's not a strong twig. I'm just going to try to sit on it. If it doesn't work, I'll fly somewhere else.
Yep.
And so we gain these, through these processes, we start gaining these strengths that we have. Like, what if it doesn't work?
Mental wings? Is that what
Mental wings, yeah.
Mental wings.
Well,
I like
it's that inner confidence. Like, no matter what happens, if it all goes bad, I'll find a way out of it because
Yeah.
I did it before.
Exactly.
Because I found out that I know how to get out of things. I can think through things.
Those fears that are holding you back are really all in your head. You're
Right.
not, most of the time, if you face your fears, you're not going to die.
Right.
You're just going to get stronger. You're going to be able to experience something that you weren't experiencing before.
Right.
Even if that's just freedom of that fear, just relief from that fear.
Right.
That's what a lot of my life was controlled by fear until the last, I've been fighting it for, years, but that's a lot of what my mindset is about, is just like, oh, that's scary, but hey, if I face it down, something beautiful can come from it.
Right. Right.
Or maybe I just land on a twig.
I'm gonna
maybe
try
a
to
beautiful bird's on that twig. Who knows?
Right. I'm gonna try to. I was doing a brain education training one time when I was in LA, and afterwards this poem come to me. And I'm not a poet, but I wrote this poem, or at least it came to me. I don't know if I can recite it exactly, but I hope I can get the gist of it. It says something to the effect. It's on my Facebook page that as I've traveled through my life, there's been trouble, there's been strife. I've changed my directions to avoid the falls. Some of my obstacles were unclimbable walls. And then from heaven came an enlightening call. Look again, there are no walls. Now I see all I can see. The walls were a creation made by me. I am now brave and without fear. There are no walls, no, not here. Something like that.
Yeah, I like
But
it.
it was, but that came to me is like, I didn't write that. I wrote it down, but I didn't write it. But it was the realization of how we create these walls, and they're like what they call it, paper tigers. They don't really exist, but we act as though they do. Well, this has been a great talk. I don't know how long this is going on, so let's do this again sometime.
I love it. I love talking to Dan.
Great. Well, folks, thanks for watching and stopping by, and we appreciate your attendance. Hopefully we've brought something out that you can find useful. And please let the comments below, in the comments below, please continue on with the conversation and bring some of your own ideas to the table so we can all expand and learn even more than what we brought today. So thanks for stopping by. Have a good day.